Hello and welcome to this live broadcast. Our new China tour brings us to Shanghai on the last day, which is day 12. Now, Shanghai is a city that's known for being many things: a trade center, a business center, a financial center, and a tech hub. But did you know that this city is also where the first National Chinese Communist Party Congress was held back in 1921? Now, here's a story to tell you all about it and about China's development after that.
Behind Shanghai's iconic clock, this man keeps every one of his chimes on time. 59-year-old Wei Yunsi has been doing the same work for the past 28 years.
It's a mechanical clock, so it requires winding every 3 days.
The clock faces the eastern bank of the Huangpu River, on which he witnessed one of the world's most dramatic rises of city skylines over 3 decades' time.
When I first started working here, there was nothing on the other side. But what happened next stunned me. Sometimes I could not believe my eyes seeing those buildings literally grow in front of me.
On the western bank, history was even more dramatic. This big band-like clock was built by the British in the 1920s when part of Shanghai became a foreign concession. In front of it, colonialists, the Japanese army, a capitalist government all came and went. But one event, which was much more secretive and low profile, later proved to have stood the test of time.
This is the place where the Communist Party of China held their very first meeting 98 years ago. Their gathering was found out by the then government, so they moved to a boat to continue the meeting, where they secretly vowed to devote their life to the cause of a new China.
请代表们起立，同志们，小点声，好的。马克思主义万岁！马克思主义万岁！
Next door to the education base of communism, modern-day consumerism. With some of Shanghai's most fancy bars and restaurants using these Western-style buildings as a selling point. These radical changes are a microcosm of Chinese aspirations for a better life. But Shanghai doesn't represent all of China.
My dad is working far away in Xinjiang. My mom has abandoned me.
Yin Jiahao is a rural left-behind child. He lives with his grandpa in a remote village on Gansu's lowest plateau. They struggle below the poverty line, relying on his father's wages from a city 2,000 kilometers away. Communism aims to wipe out class gap, but in China, this remains a challenge.
确保到2020年
We must work to eradicate poverty in China by 2020.
One of the party's first centenary goals, building up a well-off society with zero poverty by next year, a century after the party's founding. Experts say that this communist goal needs efforts from capitalists.
Globalization is nothing wrong. And if globalization really can benefit everybody, enable every individual.
Chinese internet tycoons have invested heavily in bringing e-commerce into remote villages, helping residents profit from global trade. Part of the first centenary is to get every Chinese citizen connected on the internet.
This kind of motor tricycle is probably the most handy tool to carry these parcels to the homes of the villagers.
Nearly 100 million Chinese have worked their way out of poverty since 2013. The party now seems able to lift the remaining few million out, as the clock is ticking toward the deadline. Another deadline will come 30 years from now, making China a modern socialist country by the 100th anniversary of New China by 2049. By then, Wei Yunsi and Jack Ma will both be in their 80s, and I'll be retired. What will that China look like? The faces of these children growing up under some of the fastest changes of our time. Han Peng, CGTN, Shanghai.
Well,
the Shanghai of 1921 couldn't be any more different from what we see around us today. Skyscrapers as far as the eye can see. But Shanghai still offers you an opportunity to step back into time and see what it was like when that first CPC meeting took place here in 1921. Our roving reporter Wu Mengxi is checking it out at the museum. Let's have a look.
It's right here.
Well, thank you, Jason.
Let me see.
Hi. Thank you, Lindy.
What kind
Thank you,
of
Lindy
restaurant
and
is here?
Chenxi.
It should
and guys,
be nearby.
welcome.
It should
This
be-
is the last day of
It's not a restaurant here. It's
China.
It's
Now, as you
the
might remember
venue
from my
for
colleague Chang's story,
the
which we just saw,
CPC's first
China is
the
aiming to
convention.
wipe out poverty
It's
and build
not
a
a restaurant
moderately
here.
well-off
What's first
society by
convention?
2020, and that is
you
one
have
of
to
the first
reservation pass if you want to go
goals of
inside.
the
You have to
Chinese Communist Party of
But
China.
what is inside? Is it
And
museum
those
or
who are
what?
familiar with China
yes.
would know,
Similar to a
the
museum.
CPC plays
It's a historical
absolute
place for
leadership role in the country's development, making all the plans for the country's development and etc. And where we are today is quite a symbolic place in that sense, because this is the memorial house of the where the first National Congress of the CPC was held, and you could see, there's loads of people here, and right there is the characters there tell you that this is the site of the first National Congress of the CPC. And tell you what, this is Friday, so this is a typical work day, and yet there are still so many tourists coming here. And actually, we're gonna talk to some of them, but before that, I might just okay, let's just talk to them first, and before we tell you more, about the CPC and its history. 你好，打扰一下，我是 Okay, so this guy's a bit shy. 你好，我是中国国际电视台的记者，想问一下你们是从哪里来？你们就是上海 ，so this group they come from Shanghai actually. 您是做什么的？今天是过来干什么 ？What are you here for?
半导体的，然后我们今天有团建，刚好来参观一下这个中国会址。
团建过来是吧 ？So they're here as part of their team building activity. 是过来一会儿会进去参观是吗 ？Are you here to visit?
现在都在排队，然后我们人还有没有聚齐，待会儿会考虑进去参观。
They're lining up to enter it. 这来这儿有没有什么就是期待或者预想或者什么？觉得这里是个什么样的地方？
其实我们也有党员在这里。
您是党员吗 ？Are you a party member?
不好意思，我可能当初学习不太好，没有入党。对，要有纪念意义，我们也就过来在这儿合个影、拍个照，进去参观一下。
So this lady is quite funny here. She says she wasn't really good at her studies, so she wasn't able to join the party. The party is quite selective about its members, but I'm sure she's just joking here. And she says this place is quite, it has quite a symbolic importance, so that's why they're here, paying a visit, take some group photos. Okay, thank you. 谢谢您. Well, you see all these people, they're holding China's national flags and taking a picture right in front of this, the stone with the etchings, the characters saying that this is the site of the first NPC National Congress. All right, we might need to navigate our way around. It just gives you an idea of how popular this place is. Yeah, we see this group of people holding the party flag here. 您好，我是中国国际电视台的记者，想问一下你们是哪里来的 ？Where are you from?
上海的。
是上海电力是。Okay, so they're from a local university in Shanghai. 拿着这个党旗是因为大家都是党员还是？
对，都是党员。
They're all party members. 今天过来是参观还是什么呢？之前来过吗 ？Did you come here before? 那今天是再一次来是吗？
是的，然后因为有一些新的同事，新入职的同事，所以再来看一看。
Because they have new members in their group, so they come here again because she had been here before. 作为党员来这里有什么样不一样的心情吗 ？I'm asking as a party member what kind of feeling or emotions they have when they come here.
就是要重新去学习一下，去了解一下这个 我们党的一个这个过程嘛，我觉得还是挺重要的，就是大家还是要不停的去学习啊。
She says it's important as a party member to learn again and again, more and more about the party's history. 就是一个学习它的历史 ，like about the party's history, learning about the party's history or what.
是为了更好的了解现在嘛，所以我觉得这是一个不断学习的过程。
It is the United States of America.
我觉得也是一种象征意义吧，就是你要定期去提醒自己，还是需要不断的学习，去提醒自己，有一些东西是需要坚持的嘛。
Okay, so I was asking, because she said they have to keep reminding themselves they need to keep learning, and that's why they keep coming back here, to remind themselves of, I guess, the party's history, why it was founded, and as a party member, what they need to adhere to. 您可以简单说一下，就是坚持的是什么吗？您觉得坚持的应该是什么？
就是还是要坚持一个初心吧，我觉得。
Initial cause, which is.
就像对党员来说，肯定就是为人民服务，这个是一个初心。
And the initial cause is to serve the people, as a party member. Okay, 谢谢您 Thank you. Well, I don't know what you guys think. You see these young people pasting the national flags in all kinds of shapes, in rectangular and in heart shape, in their face. Well, let's maybe move a little bit away from this crowd while I try to give you a bit more background information about this place. It was 98 years ago in 1921 when the Chinese Communist Party was founded, right? It was here. That's why this place is symbolic. It was here that at first 13 delegates from the CPC's early organizations, because the party was not yet founded. So 13 delegates from its early organizations, including the then 28-year-old Mao Zedong, who later became China's first chairman, right? So the 13 delegates and two delegates from the Communist International, they gathered in this place for a meeting for the first National Congress. It was during this meeting that when they announced that China's CPC, the Communist Party of China, was founded. And earlier we talked to some tourists, and you see this place has a unique, significance to them. And as I said, it's a typical work day, and yet there are so many people lining up. And if our camera pan around over there, well, we have a special guest joining us, but let's just show you, this is the line of people trying to get into the museum, the memorial house. And that just tells you how popular this place is like this in an average workday. And right, so for more on the CPC's role, I talked about it playing an absolute leadership role in China's development. And for more on that, I'm actually now joined by a special guest, Mr. Wu Guanjing, a
I'm
professor
pleased to be here.
from the East China Normal University. And Professor Wu, let's start by giving our audience a bit more information about China's political system. China emphasizes that its political system is like multi-party cooperation and political consultancy under the leadership of the CPC, which is quite different from the two-party or multi-party system in the West.
Yes.
And I guess that's something our audience would be, who are not familiar with China, would be confused about or curious about. So let's talk a bit more about that. What kind of, what resulted in such a difference?
Okay. Yes, it is a good question because in my view, two-party system or multi-party system is viewed by some Western scholars and politicians as the only form of democracy. And in their view, other forms or models have all failed. But I think that is precisely, China's contribution to political theory and also to the world.
China's model, right?
Yes, I will use the Chinese form of democracy. Because in the last 7 decades, China has developed a unique form of democracy, and it has at least two merits compared with the Western ones. The first is it is much more effective and efficient in making things done, in deliver things, and in creating things. And
its executive ability to execute all the policies.
Yes, and also in my view, the second one is also very important, and it has more capacity in preventing or protect the society from being torn apart. I mean, two-party system, has structural tendency to to make each other, to attack each other's position, weaken each other, undermine each other's values, positions, and policies, and also even moral integrity. Look at today's United States of America. It's in split. So the two-party system engenders this, this split, the split of the society, and it's very hard to, even for United States to match things up. Today, the Trump administration, its policies, but in his opponent's eyes, that's simply trash. So there is a deep split, and also in the social aspect, we all know just the recent news, like lots of gunshots, attacks on ordinary people, right? That's hatred crime. So that's something really problematic. And I think only by contrast, the Chinese procedure of democracy has its power in generating social consensus, generating social solidarity. This is actually my analysis.
But if we talk about the Western's political system, one idea that often comes up is this check and balance idea, right?
Yeah.
So if we're saying that we are a multi-party system as well, but it's under the leadership, the absolute leadership of the CPC.
Yeah.
So are there any pitfalls, that this kind of system needs to avoid?
In my view,
or the CPC actually, I think it has a reputation for constantly correcting its mistakes.
Yes, I will agree with your point. The thing is, actually, I think if simply by using the Western standards to evaluate the Chinese practice, that will be totally different, because China, as I said, has developed its unique model. So you have to see things from its own eyes, its own framework. And that is the beauty is, it is not less democratic than Western society or Western polities, but more democratic in the way that it is capable in responding people's demand, people's problem, people's actually, the troubles.
Yeah, on that note, I would point out that one common observation is that the CPC is quite good at mobilizing or organizing things. So it excels at that ability, as you were saying.
I will mention there's what I will call the politics of mass line. So mass line, actually, the idea of mass line is uniquely created by the communist leaders in the 1930s. So this idea is we have to go to the masses, go to people to know the actual problem, to know the situation they are facing. Then we make policies. So in this way, it's not like a two-party system constantly attacking each other with their own party line. Maybe they have little interest in what is actually happened there. But the mass line politics, this
is that is one thing that is,
it's very unique. Yes, stick through. And you mentioned Chinese politics is constantly improving itself, correcting itself. I think this is the defining feature, one of the defining features of Chinese politics. It's also go back to the mass line politics, because it constantly, non-stoppingly go to the masses, and it notices and also it acknowledges the changing needs of the masses. It's changing over the decades. So, and it adjusts policies and quickly, efficiently to what is going on, actually going on, instead of just making policy from above.
Right. Well, I think that gives you an interesting, take on how to look at the CPC. And due to time limit, we have to put history aside for now. And we mentioned earlier, one of the CPC's centenary goals is to wipe out poverty by 2020, at its 100 years of anniversary of establishment, and also to build China into a moderately well-off society, right? But there's another centenary goal, and that's by 2049, when the country will be actually founded for 100 years, and that goal is to build China into a modern socialist country. And in these days, technology is becoming more and more the driving force of development. So now I guess I'll turn to my colleagues Sean Calebs and Zhao Yunfei in the city of Wuhan, who will show you how the tech industry is developing there.
Yeah, it is always great to see my friend Xu Mengqi. She does such a wonderful job out there. One thing I've learned in covering China, there is the phrase, my old friend. Xu Mengqi is my old friend. I've known her for years now, and she does a great job.
Yeah, there's so many different meanings. My old friend. It's interesting thing about this job is we once all good friends, and then we're all separated. Well, when we get to work.
Yeah, but we have a new friend today.
We have a new friend today. So Sean and I introduce Chen Zijian. She is a reporter of Wuhan TV. So just to give you a little background of where we are at, this is the Optics Valley. Something sounds like Silicon Valley in San Francisco, but Optics Valley is in Wuhan. So this is an innovation incubator. But originally it was a place where they developed the fiber industry and the communications industry. But now there's much more than that. Before we get to the TV show at 8 GMT to tell you more about the Optics Valley, let's walk around over here and check out what we have in this exhibition.
Yeah, and one thing that she was explaining earlier, and as you mentioned, it's much more than fiber optics, and there are 8 of the world's top Fortune 500 companies that are located here, so it's doing
here in the
business.
BioLakes. There are different sections of the Optics Valley now. The BioLake is one of them. So the BioLakes was nothing in 2017 when it was start to construction. There's nothing, a plain ground, very remote area. But just after 10 years, it becomes one of the top BioLakes in the world. So you can have the gene tags here, you can have the stem cell treatment here, you can also have smart medicine here. And back on us, we have something I think is very interesting because before this thing was invented, we have to take some medicine, to swallow some medicine.
What this does is examine the stomach and the intestinal area. Obviously, you just lay down here. This does the work that X-rays or MRI or CAT scan would have done. But you simply just take a pill.
Yeah, there's a camera, small camera in the pill.
That's amazing.
Yeah, just after 15 minutes, you can solve everything. You can check what's the condition in your
Can you take it out by any chance?
I think you pass it. This is the most delicate way I can phrase that. I think once it's down, it's down.
Yes, you're
what a wonderful question.
So how I know this company because there is first health expo in Wuhan just months ago this year. In that expo, over 1,000 companies around 26 countries have been to Wuhan to demonstrate the health industries like the medical companies, the hospitals, and also the smart medical industries, and also the senior caring hospitals, things like that. And even the investment company the insurance company, because the health is a very large topic, can involve different kind of industries. So the BioLakes is so advanced now. We can provide a large platform not only for research and development, but also for the health insurance, health guarantee for the normal people.
Now, is this the area you were talking about that 10 years ago was just barren landscape?
Yes, bare land.
Can you imagine that? I mean, any other nation in the world, if they would want to develop something this diverse, this high-tech, this cutting edge, within a decade.
And also, just to give a little background in terms of, it's all written in Chinese over here. So there are just different zones. Up in the top is the chemistry zone, and right over here is the medical zone, and the kind of health zone, and agriculture, and medical, and biochemistry. It's all kind of different zones. And once again, nothing of those are related to optics fiber.
Right.
But
it's in the optical.
Yeah.
But what's amazing, you were talking about Pfizer being one of the major pharmaceutical companies in the United States. It has a research and development entity here.
Yes.
And that is where the important work is done for a pharmaceutical company. They can keep the patent for something like 17 years on a medication they develop, and that's when they have to make all that money back.
Right.
After that, then they get into the area where other companies, and you can get the generic brand. So it's very, very important. The fact that companies are looking here speaks well of the way this area has developed.
Yes. 8 of the Fortune 500 has based here.
8 of the
Fortune 500.
Fortune 500. That's amazing. So now we come to the Beidou navigation satellite system area. So this is the system. So there are 3 navigation systems in the world. There's one developed by China, the Beidou navigation system, and one developed by the EU, and another one developed by the United States, which is GPS, as we all know. So if you use Huawei phone, sometimes Apple doesn't accept that, but if you use Huawei phone or any of the Chinese phone, many of the navigation application are using the navigation system that's kind of embedded in our phone, but also embedded in many of the other devices, like those, right?
This looks like I have no idea, but clearly you can understand how this is a maritime entity, and whether it dives or whether it stays on top of the water, clearly that global positioning is going to be important, and this is the cutting edge. Then you have a major ship next, and you can think about everything from a cargo vessel that takes from Shanghai to anywhere in the world. Obviously, aircraft, drones. This is great. And this is your strong point. You've covered stories on this, and to be honest with you, I know very, very little about this.
So when I visit the headquarters of the Beidou system, they have a kind of an entire live, real-time image. They can give you the forecast or the weather forecast, as well as the tornadoes and all sorts of things. And they were using the satellite to send to the vessels or any of the or drivers, or they use radio or many other techniques to kind of connect with people or navigating on the ocean. And also, I think the reason why they are here in the Optic Valley is developing some connections with other industries, kind of to have a multiple.
It's that symmetry that really is making China stand out now. And we've seen the weak underbelly globally with this trade war going on, because it's not like one thing is made in China, one thing is made in Russia, one thing. You need parts from all over, and it's really dragging down the global economy. So clearly, everybody would like to see this come to some kind of positive conclusion soon, especially the consumers. So
yes. So speaking of the navigation system, they're actually sharing the information, all the the GPS and Beidou. They're also sharing the techniques. So in some phones, you will be able to. The reason why the navigation system on your phone is getting more and more accurate is just the combination of all those sorts of satellites in the sky or in this space.
Now, see, you're young enough to never have to go through and read a paper map like I grew up with. I used to drive down the road with this giant thing.
Before Apple went online, we do the same thing.
Wow, well, I'm impressed. Because most young people now, they just say, well, I don't have my GPS.
What are you talking about?
One more thing that I should mention, that there is the Wuhan University, do you know? Yeah, Wuhan University is very good at the navigation. Yeah. It's one of the strongest subjects of that university, maybe the top in the world. Okay. So I should also mention that Wuhan has the Wuhan's university and college students ranks the highest in the world.
Right.
We have someone say 1 million college and university students.
So there's an investment in a brain trust. You've done stories here. It must be amazing to watch this small army of young, bright men and women settle in.
Definitely. The population of college. And we're back at the Optic Valley of central China's Hubei Province.
Yes.
We're here in the provincial capital, Wuhan. Can you? We're back again. So, well, if we come to the 5G era, or if the fibers could be more advanced, there will be no issues like this anymore.
Yes, the technicians in the Optic Valley have to work harder,
right?
Harder, yeah. Yeah. We were talking about Douyu, right? That is a company that I heard. It starts from two guys locally from Wuhan. At the beginning of they founded the company, there are only maybe 20 or 30 people. But just after 5 or less than 7 years, it's now 2,000 or 3,000 people, and many of them are locally from Wuhan because there are so many graduates here in Wuhan.
So they eat crawfish in front of the camera and go live the entire world.
From our audience who may not know everything about the company, can maybe explain a little bit about what it does. We had a...
It basically is a live streaming company
and a game live
streaming mainly, but as I know now, they also do some science and technical columns, which they launch an activity this summer. They will do a science and technology live streaming around the world, just with an app on your mobile. You can visit the museums in Europe. You can watch the full solar eclipse in South America. You can also watch a British guy, a British explorer, hiking from the beginning of the Yangtze River all the way down to the Shanghai.
So more like a story-based
Yes,
live streaming. But what is it different from Facebook or Twitter or YouTube, all of that?
I think their main product is also the live streaming. I've been to the offline activity of Douyu. They have it every May, around May. The year before last, it's 600,000 people went there in 3 days. Many young faces. They're so passionate about the PC games, the mobile games, and also the robot games. And you can also have a festival there. You can meet the how to say that, the webcaster. Yeah, there, the one that you are adored with. So it's something that I think young people can understand.
Yeah.
What do you mean? It's just
that means she's looking at you, not me.
But I think with the advantage of like the live streaming around the world to the museum, to the eclipse, we can know more. Even those people with elder age than him.
Okay.
But it's also amazing because the competition is so fierce to lure these companies.
Yeah.
And it means so much to have
the last century, something like that.
Oh, I'm afraid we've lost the signal once again.
And this comes to the end of this episode of our live stream. We would like to thank CGTN to show us for the entire day in Wuhan. Really appreciate your efforts.
You've been a great hostess. Thank you so much. We learned a great deal.
It's just a portion of what's happening in Wuhan, and I welcome you back again to see more about Wuhan.
Now we're going to throw back to... go ahead.
No. I was just saying that you get to cover this area a lot, and it may be... You've seen it before, but to me, it's just amazing when you get, you would think that areas that are so landlocked or, a nation that's so vast and so much going on, but it's really amazing. Every city has something that is just mind-blowing.
Yes, let's go ahead and throw it back to Ximeng. Hopefully you can get some shopping.
Thank you. You're welcome. It's...
Hi guys. Well, thanks to my colleagues Sean Calebs and Zhao Yunfei in the city of Wuhan, and welcome back with me in Shanghai. When it comes to in the last 11 days, we've been talking so much about the new China. And when it comes to embracing new ideas, the city of Shanghai is really a pioneer of the country. We showed you earlier the memorial house of where the first National Congress of the CPC was held, right? In the 1920s. All the activists or advocates of communism in China, a lot of them were based in Shanghai, and they were learning about all these new ideas from the Soviet, So even back then, Shanghai was quite open to new ideas. And later, after the country was founded, after the Republic of China was founded, and after the reform and opening up of the country, and China was, trying out the market economy, and Shanghai once again, established itself as a commercial hub. And now, actually, so this area where we are is a place called Xintiandi, which means new heaven and earth in English. Literal translation would be, right? And this place, I think, is also a good example to illustrate that point as well. There's a quite interesting, I think, observation. People say that young people come to this place because it's trendy, and foreigners come here because they think this is historical. Because if you observe, you see the buildings here is actually quite typical I guess, late 19th century or early 20th century Shanghai brick houses. It's quite typical. It's a quite typical structure called shikumen, which would be literally translated into stone warehouse gate. Well, I'll explain that later more. Right. So this place has actually become a cultural icon, even though it's a commercial district. Right. It's become a cultural icon for both locals and tourists. And you just see the people passing through like all the time. Right. So, and you see how commercialized this area is right now. But this is not really just Chinese. It's not. You see, not only the Chinese influence, the Shanghai shikumen structure, the brick houses, right? You also get kind of if you go further into there, it gives you a Western market festivity kind of feeling, and I guess all of these places have been polished, right? And I mean, just by looking at it, you get this Western and Eastern combined feeling, So that's another typical characteristic of Shanghai, the culture here, being famous for a mix of the East and West, and being Shanghai being open and receptive to foreign and Western ideas. Speaking of which, I have an interesting anecdote for you. We came from there, the memorial house of the CPC's first National Congress. And so when the real estate developer tried to develop this area, they were told by the government that, this house here needs to stay intact. You can't touch it because it holds such symbolic importance to the Chinese and to the Communist Party members. So, and then the developer resorted to a foreign architect who then told him, I could do this perfect mix of historical architecture with a modern architecture, and that's what you get today, right? So the project was finished in 2002, and back then there was no precedent for a commercial complex to be built like this way. It was all just tearing down the old, scrapping the old for the new. There was no precedent for building a new commercial building or complex, that looks like old architecture. So that once again is an example of how Shanghai, is trying out all these new things, even in the past, right? Well, we'll talk more about Shanghai's present more. But now we are here. This is a museum that shows you, we've been talking about this Western and Eastern kind of combination, right? And if you look at the outside, look at the facade, this area, these houses give you a feeling of, that reminds you of the Western townhouses, like the Lang housing. But actually, if you go inside, you'll see it's quite Chinese as well. And this is like the typical housing provided to, dominant in Shanghai in the late 19th century and early 20th century. Right, if you come in, we'll briefly take a tour around this place. And you see this is the small courtyard. This place has now been turned into a museum that gives you, shows you what a typical Chinese family's life is like in the 1920s and 30s. So after you come through the courtyard, this is the living room, and you see all the furniture being quite Chinese, I guess. The chairs instead of sofas, right? And the clocks. You see the ink paintings and the couplets written in Chinese calligraphy, right? All of this is quite typically Chinese, as well as those paintings over there. I mean, I've got a few of those in my in my hometown, in my family back home. My parents keep those things. Right. So let's come in here, and this would be a study for the household, I guess. If you look at this place, you've got the brushes, right? This is a quite Chinese like work table, but this lamp here is again quite Western. And if you look around, it's just everywhere. You get this mixed Chinese and Western kind of feeling. You know, like again, this furniture, these pieces here are not, you wouldn't find them, like typically find them in a Chinese household in the 20th century, I guess, early 20th century. But, and this place here is a bedroom, I guess. Right. And here is even more Chinese, you know, like this is typically reserved for the elderly, so maybe the grandma or grandpa in the family, you know, their bed, and I guess these are, you know, the peeing pots. For, you know, back in the old times, there are no modern toilets. Right, so this is just a quick glimpse of what a modern, what a traditional Chinese family in Shanghai, what their life is like in the 1920s and 30s. And this is housed in the Shikumen structure we were saying, you know, we were showing you earlier. It's, from the outside, looks quite Western. And then again, in the inside, you get all these Chinese elements as well. Right, so I guess Shanghai has always been receptive and open to new ideas and Western influence as well. So, and that has carried on even to today. You know, the city has the largest, the highest concentration of foreign expats as well as foreign companies, and you know the headquarters of multinationals. So that is in its blood, the openness, right? But you know, each city in China is different, and now it's time again to turn you to my colleagues. This time it's Jonathan Betts and Shi Xingchen in the northeastern city of Dalian. They will show you yet another side of the new China.
Of course, Mengqi. So we are now in Dalian, in northeastern China's Liaoning province, and we're at the southernmost tip of the Liaodong Peninsula. So it's basically surrounded by the ocean, and we visited the port of Dalian earlier today and had a pretty good fun there, right?
Yeah, it's been a great day. It's been a great trip. We are reaching the tail end of our 12-day extravaganza, our odyssey across China. We are the northeastern team, beginning in Inner Mongolia and ending in the city of Dalian in the province of Liaoning here. And we're on the highway here, headed across Dalian after leaving the port of Dalian earlier today, which was quite a thrill because it's one of China's largest ports. You're standing there next to these enormous container ships stacked with containers and looking at the bustling trade that has fed China and really fed global growth.
And absolutely, and it remains, I believe it was the first container port here in China after the founding of the People's Republic.
It's a fascinating history because the Dalian port founded in 1899, I believe, so 120 years, and it is in the 1970s, the first container ship containing those big metal boxes. You see them on the back of 18-wheelers. That pulled into the Chinese port of Dalian that we were just visiting, and that frankly kind of changed the face of China and changed the world. Having those huge container ships, those containers allowed global trade and allowed China to build itself into the world's second largest economy.
And absolutely, and the city of Dalian has a really complicated history, to be honest, because it was a colony by Russia and Japan. So there are a lot of local culture is influenced by like Western cultures, and we can see architectures out. And we're actually heading, as we have mentioned, we're heading towards the downtown area. It's a beautiful coastal line there, city view over there.
It is, because you know Dalian, for those of you who've never heard of Dalian and certainly have never visited it, it's a coastal city and it's a port city, and it's really rather beautiful. It has sweeping views of the water and the ocean. We are on the Yellow Sea. We're going to be crossing over the Bohai Strait very shortly, but it's a water city, and it's not, in Chinese terms at least, it's not particularly huge. There's only a few million people compared to the tens of millions of people that live in many other Chinese cities.
So right now in Dalian, I think there are almost 6 million people.
Which is huge.
It's
huge by any other standard, but again, we're in China, so the numbers are different here.
But now let's bring our guests, Benjamin Chow with the Paris School of Business and Tong Jimeng, our current affairs commentator, to just learn a little bit of what the city has achieved over the past 70 years. So first, let's talk about the city development, because we are supposed to actually see a gigantic bridge soon. It's called the Xinghai Bay Bridge, which actually is pretty long, 6 kilometers long, and it runs parallel to the coastal line, and it seems to become a staple view here in Dalian. So, what can you tell us more about this, Professor Tong, about this kind of city development and urban planning here in Dalian?
Well, China is known for city building and city constructions even during wartime, before the Second World War. In the south, on the Yangtze River, on the Yellow River, and multiple bridges has been built on the Yangtze River and also on the Yellow River. So, but these are river bridges, not to be compared with the sea bridges. This is supposed to be the gigantic achievement made by Chinese bridge builders, because in Dalian, for example, down there in Zhuhai, Macau, and Hong Kong Bridge, in Qingdao, all these cities are actually trying now to build cross-the-sea bridges. Dalian lead the way in terms of building this very bridge, which is now known as China's first anchored suspension bridge. And that breaks the record in terms of China in this area of bridge building. So it's a showcase of China's achievement made, I mean, basically over the past 40 years, since 1978, to reform and opening. And so, at the same time, it's also not just about bridge building, but also it's like now Chinese bridge looking beautiful. It's also a tourist spot. I mean, because the bridge looks beautiful, oftentimes illuminated at night and became a tourist spot over there. So it is also a sign of aesthetics, the kind of art now being demonstrated, instead of being just a construction miracle.
And you know, Professor Chanel, it's not just about bridges or highways that we're seeing here. It's the train stations, it's the rail networks, it's the airports, it's the ports. When you look back at the history of China, modern China, People's Republic of China, only 70 years. My parents are older than that. And you look at what has been accomplished and what has been built in a relatively short amount of time, particularly when it comes to the infrastructure projects. I mean, how do you sum that up?
Dalian's GDP increased close to 200 times from 4 billion in 1978 to 700 billion now. Its economic structure is very interesting. It is at the two ends of the production. It is heavy production, heavy industry, or it is agriculture. In the middle part, the consumer electronic products are mostly from Shenzhen or Chongqing. This rings a bell. Maybe it has a lot to do with central planning, setting all the prices. Some of the land are reserved just for agriculture, which Heilongjiang province alone, responsible for 1/9 at least of all the rice production in China. And the heavy industry part, we have had very success in many areas, including, for example, we have the first large car factory in here, the Changchun car factory Wenju, and it continues to have energy in this industry, attracting, for example, BMW building is world's largest factory here. And we are also able to build the first aircraft carrier, the Dalian carrier in China. So I think,
and it's being built by the Dalian shipbuilding. I mean, refitted by
that's a major feather in the cap of China, without question. So China's first aircraft carrier refitted here in Liaoning, named the Liaoning after the province. A second one is on the way. Professor Tong, I mean, let's talk about that. Since we're in the port city of Dalian, major shipbuilding, major port city, just how significant is that for China, and what does it say about the future of China?
I mean, is Liaoning aircraft carrier or
Yes.
shipbuilding in general?
Both, but particularly when it comes to the aircraft carriers.
Well, the aircraft carrier actually, once again, it's a sign of China in making huge achievement in terms of shipbuilding. Yes, it came into China as a shell, it's a large shell basically, and China actually added lots of these basic infrastructures on board and inside that very large ship. In a sense, I think it is also the epitome of Chinese shipbuilding, not just in terms of the military kind of strength, but also in terms of shipbuilding for civilian use. It is not, in fact, Liaoning is not a battleship. It's a ship classified as a training ship, right? It's all about training soldiers, training
But the
Marine
second
sailors.
one is
right.
about to be combat ready.
Absolutely right. They call what they call it the People's Liberation Army Naval Surface Force, and in that sense, it is supposed to be in battle in the next few years, celebrating the this very 70th anniversary.
But then definitely like heavy industries like shipbuilding as well as infrastructure building here in northeast China is still, I mean, they're still big. But then throughout our trip, like from Inner Mongolia to Dalian right here, we're also talking about this revitalization of northeast China. Let's just say, like zooming on Dalian, you know, Dalian has a really important port and famous for commodity, and that kind of growing to even other markets like futures markets. We have the Dalian commodity future exchange right here. But still, it seems like local economy still is struggling a little bit, right? Because the GDP in Dalian slows down a little. So what's your take on this, Professor Shao?
Relying on just natural resources and also just the staying on the price heavy industry is not enough. We need an example. The northeastern provinces alone contribute to 50% of the China's oil production. But the production is declining rapidly. It's about 1/3 of all ships produced in China, and 1/4 of all cars produced in China. But then, as you said, some of these even military use ships can have some civilian use. I think it is a general principle that applies to many stay-on prices. So then the idea is how could we incentivize the stay-on price and the scientists in the stay-on price to bring out their patent to do some non-sensitive civilian use. That is a huge market, I think.
But what about local service industry? It just seems like in northeast China, the service industry is just somewhat not as developed or as attractive as, for example, in Shanghai or in Shenzhen in southern China.
Service industry right now, a large part of it is the internet industry. I heard that some of them are coming in. Actually, they are trying, but the pace is a bit slow. But they are coming in.
Because of incentives, or
there are 120 million people in there. It's a huge market by itself.
But what about this, Professor Tan? You probably know this. Like a lot of Japanese companies and South Korean companies that used to have headquarters in Dalian, but then some of them are leaving the city now. So, any take on this?
That's something we've heard, is that the revenue is slowing here, growth is slowing, and that they are worried in some ways about the future and are trying to adapt, right?
No, I think it is very natural as China's economy continues to develop and developed into this very new century of service-oriented sort of industry in the future. They found that the Chinese kind of a labor cost is increasing, and in this sense that the high cost of labor is creating this problem for these foreign enterprises. Now, for example, out there to the south in Vietnam, in Cambodia, and in Thailand, and all these markets actually offer a kind of a window opportunity for these companies where their labor costs are so very low and laborers are getting increasingly skilled. But here in China, in Dalian, in Dongbei in general, I think that it's not just because that they are leaving, but it's also we see an influx of kind of a talents, local talents who have been studying abroad and coming back and set up their own startup companies. And so I know several of my friends who start up their own, for example, their service companies, translations, foreign language teaching schools, and computer software companies, biotechnology is huge here in Dalian. I mean, biotechnology now is flourishing in this very great city, especially with the local policy kind of improvement in this very high-tech zone. I mean, the one that we visited perhaps this morning is kind of a home to hundreds of these startup companies.
So it seems like domestic companies were actually Chinese people, or locals, or people from other parts of the country are actually drawing to this place and trying to help, like, start up here and to contribute.
I think it's change of guards.
But the trade is also still a huge driver at this point, correct? And so, I mean, when you look at the trade war, boiling right now, that's got to deliver an impact and a blow here, right?
Yes, because the U.S. is the fourth largest export market of the Hubei area. Yes.
And so, I mean, what do you think that ports like Dalian can do to try to better insulate and protect themselves from global uncertainties like a trade war popping up?
Yeah. Let me take this the question you asked this morning, perhaps. I mean, Dalian has been not, kind of interestingly and ironically, an international port. I mean, Dalian has been, in fact, a regional port. Basically identified the largest one in Northeastern Asia, right? In Northern Asia, East Asia, and perhaps this part of the Asia-Pacific Rim. And so Dalian deals mostly with Japan, South Korea, and Southeast Asia, and a little bit of the European market before. And so now I think they're trying to kind of cater to the needs of the domestic markets. On the other side of the port, we also have a Xinghai port. And Xinghai actually now is trying to integrate with Dalian port to cater to the needs of this very long cluster, industrial cluster cities basically in Dongbei in Northeast.
And explain me why that is significant. We hear that these ports are consolidating, they're merging. What does that mean, and why is that important?
Well, it means that port cities are now kind of converting with the highway system, with the train system, with perhaps the airport system right now to cater to the needs, for example, the I-Nor. I mean, right down in the middle in southern China, where there's the Qingdao port, which is now the largest import port. Now in China, in Dalian, in Northeast, we also try to ship these I-Nors from Fushun. I mean, a neighboring city along this very Jingshen and also Jinghai and Shenda expressway.
So that's the railway links.
Right, the railway link that connect these cluster cities in the Northeast. And so in this sense, Dalian is becoming increasingly important in connecting and in kind of building these very clusters into a full scale, a full-fledged sort of industrial cluster.
And we heard that as a focus earlier from the port officials, that they would like to focus more on Northeastern Asia, on European markets, to better connect and build its brand as a regional hub here.
So it seems like Dalian has enjoyed fast growth during the past few years, but now they are also kind of facing new challenges and they're trying to adjust them to this new era, right?
New era without question. Exciting new changes for them and exciting new changes for us as we wrap up the tail end of our bus trip here on the highway here through the city of Dalian. And again, as I point out, it is really beautiful as we look out the window. You see the greenery. We were hoping to show you the water, but it looks like our timing is going to be off a little bit here today. But we have much more throughout the day here on CGTN. We'll be back on Global Business and on China 24 on the CGTN television network. So be sure to tune in there and look for us during that show, because we have a little bit more to talk about before we end our 12-day odyssey.
We will be. And now, let's just hand it over to our colleague in Shanghai. I love that city. I leave that city for 3 years. Ximengqi, take it away.
Well, guys, Dalian is, of course, very different from Shanghai. And this difference and diversity is exactly what we've been trying to show you in our special series, New China. Now, back in Xintiandi, we started with the site of the first National Congress of the CPC, which has a really has great historical importance. And now we are in this area next door with, just bars and restaurants and boutiques which are teeming with people. And it's quite popular tourist destination. So I get this I think it's an interesting coexistence between China's revolutionary past and its modernity today. And I have to say that the Chinese people are quite good at adapting to the times. 70 years ago when China was founded, no one would expect that the country would grow to be what it is today, right? And the CPC's first centenary goal to eradicate poverty and build this country into a moderately well-off society or nation is actually almost accomplished. But China is still, fast changing. And what will the country be like 30 years from now on is something we can't really answer, So at the founding, at the 100 years of its founding, maybe China will look even more different, even more, for sure it will be more modernized. But what will it look like exactly is something left for everyone to imagine. Now with that, we'll come to the end of this edition of CGTN Live. And this is the last day of our 12th day special coverage of New China. And if you've missed our earlier shows, you could always go back to the CGTN app or our social media accounts in Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, or Weibo, and search for New China, and then you'll see. Well, that's it, and thanks for watching.
Unprecedented transformation from its old industrial base in the northeast to its new manufacturing powerhouse in the southeast and to its emerging southwest. CGTN offers you a panoramic view of contemporary China. Our crews will travel along 3 different routes and come to you live from dozens of locations and free mobile studios. Join us for an all-inclusive look at China on our TV channel and digital platforms, September the 9th to the 20th. It is New China, then and now, in celebration of the 70th anniversary of the People's Republic of China, only on CGTN.